Okay, and we are live. Hi, everybody. My name is Winnie, and we are back with Racial Perceptions
Hi,
Mental Health Division.
Lisa.
Hey, Cartessa. Can you hear me okay?
Hey, Winnie, how are you?
I'm doing pretty
I can.
well.
Can
How
you
are
hear
you?
me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah. So for the month of May,
Okay, good.
can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Can you hear me?
technical difficulties, people. Yeah, I can hear you. So
Are we
for the
having
month of
technical
May,
difficulties?
I think I can hear you, but there's some kind of delay. But we'll go on. Viewers, if you can hear us, please
Okay.
type in the chat so we know that you're able to hear us. So for the month of May, we're going to be talking about mental health. So each Saturday, we're going to come on here live talking about different mental health topics. So again, like I said, my name is Winnie. We're back for the mental health edition of Racial Perceptions. So if you're watching live with us, we want to hear your questions, your comments, anything that you want to talk about, we want to hear it. Thank you, viewer, for letting us know that you can hear us. Awesome. So I'm a therapist and I'm also a life coach, and I have with me Cartessa, who is also a therapist. So Cartessa, I'm gonna
Awesome.
give you a
Yeah.
few minutes to get some shout outs out of the way.
Yes, I definitely want to give a shout out to my nephew, Russell. Today was his 6th birthday, and I missed
Oh,
his party. I'm really bummed about that, but I love you, Russell, and I hope you had a great time, and I'll see you soon, okay, buddy?
all right, awesome. Happy birthday, Russell. So to get us started, so we have someone who's listening from Florida. Awesome. I'm in Alaska, by the way, and
Oh,
Cartess is in Oklahoma. So thanks to technology, we can
okay.
do these kinds of things to get online and have these different conversations. So let's go ahead and get started
Oh,
and
that's
dive
my
into.
aunt.
Oh, that's your aunt? Oh, cool.
Yeah, I just saw the comment.
Oh, awesome.
Yes,
All
I'm
right.
so happy she's here.
Yeah, that's great. So we're gonna go ahead and just dive into the topic that we have for today. We're talking about mental health therapy, and with that, we want to cover things like myths about therapy, how to find a therapist, where to look for a therapist. So anything that's mental health related that we can think of, we're going to cover that today. And as you're watching, if you have comments or questions that come up, please send them in the chat. If we can answer them, we will. If we don't have the answers, then we will point you to the right directions for you to find answers. So let's start by talking about some common myths about mental health treatment and mental health therapy in general. So one thing that I hear a lot that's kind of um, stop people from seeking help for mental health is that um, only crazy people go to therapy. Or within the Black community, I've also heard the common misconception or myth that therapy is only for white people. So those are two of the big ones that I've had discussions with people about. How about you, Cartissa?
Well, I know that there are a lot of myths about therapy, and
Hmm.
the one about therapy being only designed for Black people is a huge barrier that
Hmm.
the African community has at this point. And we're trying to get away from that. We're trying to like steer it away and kind of normalize it. Uh,
Hmm.
but that's probably one of the biggest myths that we have. Like Black people, the African American culture, we like to deal with things sort of in house.
Hmm.
And um, no matter how toxic, the activities or the communication is, no one really thinks to be like, okay, well, let's go and seek out, a professional
Mhm.
to help us, with our relationships and to resolve whatever issues. Um, so that's probably the biggest myth. And then also the myth about if you go to therapy, then you're crazy or there's something severely wrong with you, which isn't the case at all. Sometimes, especially during the pandemic, people can just be lonely.
Right.
There's a lot of isolation going on. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's something severely wrong with you. You could just be having a bad day. And having a therapist is there to provide that support with that clinical experience to give you
Mhm.
tools, to talk to you, to listen, to understand, so that you can feel better and you can be the best version of yourself. So,
Right.
yeah, those two myths, Winnie, I absolutely agree with. I think that those are the biggest ones that
Mhm.
we should identify,
Mhm.
Also, therapy is too expensive. I
Yeah.
hear that quite a bit, and, there's not enough resources for it, especially in low income communities, which is another barrier, but we do have some avenue, um, to get around that. Not enough, not nearly enough,
Yeah.
but we do have some avenue to get around that, and, so I'm hoping that as time continues to go on, it'll get better
Mhm. Mhm.
with the
Yeah,
financial.
absolutely. And as you were talking about, the fact that we as Black people, there's like this common misconception, I guess, within our community that therapy is only for white people. And I think some of that has to do with the history
Mhm.
of, um, you know, not having a lot of Black people in the field and the history of colonization and, all that type of stuff. I mean, last summer we talked about a lot of that in a racial perceptions episode that we did, where we talked about how there's not necessarily a lot of trained clinicians who can understand the culture and where clients are coming from.
Right.
So that definitely causes a huge barrier to people seeking help. Um, the other one that I hear a lot is that I can deal with my problems on my own. Um, so that one, takes a lot for um, people to get to the point where they realize that, hey, just because I'm struggling with something doesn't mean I'm weak. And Danielle and I did a video not too long ago talking about strength and what that looks like and what that means. So to anyone watching the live right now, or if you're going to be watching the replay, I just want to speak to you directly and say that if you're struggling with something that is affecting your mental health, seeking help for it does not make you weak. On the other hand, it takes a lot of strength for you to seek help, to find someone that you can talk to help you go through whatever you're going through. So it's a strength to ask for help and to seek
I
help.
agree completely. I've always said that there's strength and vulnerability.
Hmm.
And if you can look at yourself and say, and be aware and say, I know I'm not okay. I know I'm not handling this right. My relationships aren't doing well. I'm not doing well at work. I'm not sleeping well. I mean, if
Right.
you can look at yourself and say that these are problems that you're having, and then say, I need some help. I need
Hmm.
some help. I think that that is comes from a strong point for you because you're aware that you're not your
Yeah.
best self at that point.
Right.
And to seek that best self, you
Hmm.
need to go and you need to, learn about more about the problems or the issues that you're having. You'd be surprised to learn how much it could benefit you just, reaching out,
Hmm.
sending that message that you do need help and you do
Right.
need to work through some things, which
Right.
we all do.
Yeah.
We all
Right.
do. So it's not necessarily, I mean, and I can understand why people would think therapists are intimidating, because you're like, oh, well, if they're a therapist, they have everything under control, which is absolutely not
Yeah.
true. Yeah, we have
You
to
need help too.
yeah, we have to I know I self-evaluate constantly, um, because of, things that I could possibly do or say that might harm someone else.
Right,
And so I know that that is something that, if the time comes, I need to be strong enough to say I need to seek help about it and I need to
right.
process it so I can no longer do harm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
100% agree. The other one that I thought of that prevents people from seeking help is that I'm not so sure that in general people understand or know how therapy can benefit them. So let's take a few minutes to just kind of talk about what some of the benefits of going to therapy are. I'll let you go first.
Well, I can definitely start off by saying there is that validation,
Mhm.
that whatever you're going through is tough or is important to you.
Right,
And I think that that is a big part of it. You don't want people thinking that going to therapy is a waste of time for them or, to feel a certain kind of
mhm.
way about going and talking to someone about their personal problems or
Right,
what they're going through personally. So I think that a benefit is having that person, that validation, that therapist that you can go to, that no matter what you say, you
mhm.
know no matter what you do, that therapist is going to do everything in their power to understand and to try to help and to try to ease that burden with tools that therapists have spent years. You and I can count the years that we
Yeah.
spent in school, and hours practicing, and it's a safe place. So, and that's another huge benefit. You don't have to go wondering about judgment, or you don't have to go wondering about some strict set of rules or
Mhm.
conditions for you to be accepted into
Yeah,
your therapeutic relationship. And so I think that that is a benefit. Um, I also think it's a benefit to be able to express how
right.
you feel without someone being like, well, I feel this way. The therapist is not there for an interaction type of treatment. The therapist is there to listen and to understand and to provide you with the necessary items that you need, whether it's emotional, whether it's, like experimental, like you get
Mhm.
homework sometimes, they're there to
Always
help you
looking like
provide with. And so it's good to be able to go to a place where, for one, you're not going to be judged. And two, you're going to be able to express yourself. And, it's not, like a two-way conversation where you're like,
Mhm.
well, my sister really made me mad. And then your therapist is going to be like, well, I agree with your sister, or I think, it's going to be self-focused on
Yeah.
you can improve yourself, which will ultimately help you improve the relationships with your sister or your family or your
Mhm.
significant other or your
Mhm.
children, or just you know um going about it for you you know
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, you touched on the validation that clients can get from going to therapy. I was also thinking about the fact that clients learn coping skills and tools to manage their feelings and emotions. Other benefits include being able to understand your dysfunctional patterns and learning tools to help you break them and to change, because that's what therapy is about. Therapy helps you change. And then, in addition to that, being able to work on past trauma, whether it's emotional, physical, sexual, any type of trauma, therapy can help you with that. Therapy helps you heal. Um, So these are all different ways that therapy helps. And the other thing that I talk to clients about a lot is that you don't necessarily have to have a mental health diagnosis for you to benefit from therapy.
Absolutely.
Anyone can benefit from therapy. If you're struggling with emotional difficulties and um, you're having challenges within your own self, or you're having challenges interacting with other people. So within relationships, like with friendships, marriages, any type of relationship, workplace issues, these are all different things that may not necessarily meet criteria for a DSM-5 diagnosis, but you can still get help with. And of course, if you're having issues with like depression, anxiety, um, bipolar disorder, ADHD, PTSD. I mean, all these different, mental health diagnoses. Of course, therapy will be able to help with that. But I just wanted to touch on the fact that just because you don't necessarily meet criteria for an official mental health diagnosis doesn't mean that you can't benefit from therapy. Um, the other thing that I want to touch on is that depending on the therapist that somebody chooses to work with, depending on, the kind of fit that the client and the therapist has, will also determine how much the client benefits from therapy. Because I've definitely gotten calls and have had different conversations with people where they're like, I went to therapy and I've been to therapy for X amount of years or X amount of months, and therapy doesn't really seem to work. And I always ask, how are things with your therapist? How did you like your therapist? Because I think that relationship that you have with your therapist, like whether you like your therapist or not, will really determine how much progress you're able to make in therapy. Because I kind of feel like it's kind of common sense that that if I'm not a good fit for a client, and if the client feels like they're not a good fit for me, that it makes it harder to make any progress. If, as the client, you don't like me as your therapist, of course, you're not going to hear any feedback, any recommendations that I'm giving you, because you already have that type of, I don't know, block, or
Mhm.
call it
Disability.
resentment, whatever. Yeah, that's kind of keeping you from making progress. However, if there's a good fit where we're connecting and we're able to build that trust, then you're going to get much more out of therapy working with a therapist who's a good fit for you than working with someone who's not a good fit. So I just kind of wanted to touch on that just a little bit.
And I agree 100%. The therapeutic process starts with building a therapeutic relationship.
Hmm.
So you start with meeting this person that you're inevitably going to have to trust. You're going to have to be able to listen to and take advisement
Hmm.
from, maybe even some pushback or
Hmm.
criticism or some, tough questions. Uh, and you can't go into that situation with someone just like you wouldn't be able to go into that situation with someone off the street and
Right.
not be able to have that good fit, just like you
Hmm.
can have friends that you feel more comfortable with talking to, and then friends that you don't necessarily share some things with.
Right.
Same thing with a therapist. And I don't think that people understand that you don't have to be stuck with someone that you don't trust and that you're
Right.
not comfortable with, because that's going to just halt the whole process of
Hmm.
you coming to terms with whatever it is that you need to come to, because it can be painful. It's
Yeah, absolutely.
painful stuff that you have to talk about. You were talking about trauma and family relationships, and eventually we're going to talk about transgenerational trauma,
Hmm.
that goes down from generations into
Right.
families. And these are tough issues to talk about because these are ingrained emotional trauma.
Mhm.
And you can't just open up with someone that you don't feel comfortable with, someone that
Exactly.
you don't feel that can hear you or that understands. And therapists are humans at best. On their best
Mhm.
day, they are human. So
Mhm.
there is that possibility that you can come and meet a therapist and them not be fitting. Their,
Right.
personality could be a little off to the left for you, or, you know, you could not like the style of the office. It really does not matter. If you get there and you are uncomfortable, that is something that, therapists, ethically should absolutely speak up
Mhm.
and say, listen, I want you to be comfortable. And if we're not comfortable together, then let me find you another therapist
Right.
that can help you be comfortable so that you can
Mhm.
get that work done. Because, I want you to get that work done. And
Yeah.
we need to help. We need to, refer out and advise and, give references. But
Right.
I really don't understand that it's literally that easy. We
Yeah.
go through training all the time to prepare us for individuals that, for whatever reason, we call it transference. Sometimes it's counter transference, where for some reason, someone can come and see me and I can remind them of their daughter that they don't get along with, No one's fault. No one's fault. But how well are we going to do if you're trying to process about that daughter? You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
if I'm reminding you of her. So I think if people can look at it from that objective point of view instead of, well, I don't really want to change. I don't really know how that's gonna
Mhm.
cross, or I don't want to be rude, and look at it more like a, will I need to change to see if I can
Mhm.
get a better fit? I
Yeah.
think we would do a lot better with that because that happens quite a bit.
Yeah. And the other thing that I always remind clients of is that therapy is about them. Therapy is not about me. So when we start working together, if again, like you said, for whatever reason, the client is not feeling the relationship and they feel like, it's not a good fit. Therapy is about you. If it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. We will refer you out to someone else who can help you. So that actually leads us into the next point that I had is how to find a therapist and how to choose a therapist. And more importantly, how to choose a therapist who's going to be a good fit for you. So, as far as how to find a therapist, I've definitely gotten questions about, well, where do I even start to look? Like, how do I do that? So, I'm just gonna say that one way to find a therapist pretty easily is to go on Psychology Today and search for a therapist in your state. So I'm saying to search for a therapist in your state because it's absolutely important that the therapist you choose is licensed in the state that you live in.
Yeah.
So when you go on Psychology Today and you're looking for um, different criteria, put in your zip code and see who comes up on that list. And then from there, you can kind of go through the list and see what their qualifications are. If you're looking for specific criteria, like if you're looking for someone who specializes in trauma or someone who specializes in LGBTQ plus issues or someone who specializes in relationship issues, you can do that with Psychology Today. If you want a therapist with a certain background, like some people prefer having Black female therapists, or um, some people don't really care if their therapist is white or not. That's totally up to you because therapy, again, is about you. So that is one of the ways that I recommend that people search for therapy. So Psychology Today is pretty much one of the biggest directories for providers. And then off the top of my head, I can think of Mental Health Match. And then there's a few other directories that are geared specifically towards Black therapists and therapists of color. So you can also use these different platforms to search for a therapist as well. And of course, you can always use Google. You can search a therapist near me, and you enter your zip code, your city, and Google can populate like a list of websites or directories for you. Any other ways to find a therapist that I did not mention?
I want to just touch on what you said earlier. You were like, there were some people that would prefer a Black female therapist.
Mhm.
And as a Black community, there are quite a bit of people that would prefer a white therapist.
Mhm.
So I think that that is, and I've said this before, that's a barrier for, Black clinicians, but it's a also a barrier because the population that we could be helping um isn't really turning out for therapy. Like, like I said, it's getting better. But I know that finding a therapist is, I mean, it's relatively easy. I have friends that, message me or text me and they're like, "Hey, I have someone who has, this issue with anxiety. Who should I, match, or how should I go about helping her?" And off the top of my head, I can think of the dozens and dozens of clinicians that I know. And I've successfully matched dozens just by,
Mhm.
word of mouth. I know that I've had physicians reach out when they had clients that have come to them and they know that they need mental health services. Um, I know that I have, oh yes, Jennifer, me too, me too. We both agree on that. I know that I've had, some relatives that have reached out, close
Mhm.
friends, just because I'm a huge advocate of mental health for the Black community. So,
Mhm.
um, just a huge advocate for mental health in general. And
Mhm.
so, yes, we do have resources. We have Psychology Today. We have, Google. We have online platforms that
Mhm.
provide licensed therapists. We have, different means of connecting. You could go to your local state
Yeah.
health department and they could give you a referral list. You could go to a local library. That's also a safe place. I did not know
Mhm.
that. Or you could definitely just go word of mouth. You can just kind of say, "Listen, I'm looking for a therapist, and I would prefer, that therapist to, be Black, and I would prefer for that therapist to be able to relate."
Mhm.
I'm copying off of Jennifer there, and yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
Nakosha, girlfriend, hit it on the head.
Absolutely,
But
yeah.
I
That's
think
a good
that,
reason.
being able to do that, like if someone went up to you and they were like, "Hey, so I'm in Oklahoma. I really need a Black therapist
Mhm.
that can relate to me, and possibly work with myself and my children. I've got some adolescents or some teenagers, or, you know, just gave you a small
Right.
scenario." Um, you would be like, "Oh, well, Cartessa
Mhm.
would be good."
Mhm.
If someone came to me and they were like, "Hey, listen, I'm in Alaska,
Yeah.
I need to, reach out to a therapist. I need her to be a Black female. I need her to be able to, work with um families, like collectively."
Yeah.
I would definitely be like, "Oh, Winnie, Winnie would be
Mhm.
perfect for you."
Mhm.
So I think a lot of that is just, just kind of reaching out and seeing, you know, um, word of mouth, because it's more personalized and
Right.
more likely statistically to get that therapist that you can relate to, or get that person that you know,
Mhm.
that you
Right.
can go with.
Yeah, and some of the things that you were mentioning we're referring to the client knowing what they want out of a therapist, right? So when clients reach out to me for my services or for just general questions about how do I find a therapist, I always ask, what are the issues that are bringing you to therapy? So what do you need therapy for? And then what are you looking for in a therapist? Because I think that that's important. Because maybe you want my services and you would like for me to be your therapist, but based on the issue that you're experiencing, the presenting problem, that may not be something that I'm competent to
Do, yeah,
work with or
exactly,
something that I'm comfortable working with. So
exactly.
we may be a good fit, but the problem that you're experiencing may not be something that I can work with. So in these scenarios, it's helpful for whoever you're reaching out to for them to know what the issue is. What do you need help with? So let them know, I'm needing help for X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And so with the question about what you're looking for or what are you looking for in a therapist, that's always an interesting one for me because it kind of opens up these different conversations about, well, I would really prefer a Black female therapist, or I don't really care of their cultural background. I just need someone who can work with this, and that problem, someone who will be able to listen to me really well. I've also had people tell me I would prefer to do therapy in person versus doing it via telehealth. So
Yeah.
all of these things are important for you as the client to know because again, therapy is about you and all these preferences are about you. And so what I try to do when I have these conversations with people is to try to empower them. Look for a therapist who's going to work for you because at the end of the day, you're hiring me to help you. You're hiring Cartessa. You're hiring other therapists out there to work for you. And if for whatever reason you're not getting what you need from that therapy relationship and they're not meeting your criteria, that's okay. There are other therapists out there, and maybe someone else might be a good fit. I mean, so this is actually making me think about some comments that I've gotten about how, well, I went to this one therapist, things didn't really work out. I'm never going to see a therapist again. This whole thing doesn't work. And I always go back to, well, was the therapist a good fit? And I always kind of caution clients about kind of getting references from other clients who've seen a therapist that they didn't really like. Because here's the thing, I might go to a therapist and I have a really great experience with that therapist. And then I refer Cartessa to go see my therapist. Cartessa goes sees my therapist and things don't work out. So
Right.
now, so now Cartessa might tell, Nicosia, hey, do not go see this therapist. Like
Yeah.
they're terrible.
They're
But the thing
horrible.
is, yeah. But the thing
Terrible.
is, it may not be that the therapist is terrible unless your therapist is doing things that are completely unethical. You know, don't just go based off of what someone else's experience was because the experience that they had may be related to the fact that they weren't a good fit with that therapist. So
And there's
Cartessa,
a
like I
lot of
said,
that. I want to
yeah.
jump in real because
Hmm.
there's a lot of that. Like you have people that go to therapists and someone can come and see me and they could be suffering with depression or, suffering with like a marital issue. And
Hmm.
so that situation would, prompt some type of cognitive behavioral approach to therapy.
Hmm.
And so we might do different activities or we
Right.
might do we might handle different subject matters. And then you'll have someone that comes in, and they're presenting with like self-harm, or they're
Mhm.
presenting with like borderline personality
Mhm.
traits.
Mhm.
That's going to be a whole different
It's a whole different skill
yeah,
set.
that's gonna be a whole different experience for that person, which, depending on, how that person is, where that person is in their life, and how willing they are to undergo treatment, because therapy is not always easy, no matter how
Mhm.
much you like your therapist, or no matter how much you feel like you fit, it's
Mhm.
not
It's
going
hard.
to always be easy for you. So I can definitely understand how one person's experience as a client can be completely different. So I agree with that. I
Mhm.
wouldn't encourage clients to say, "Oh, well, I had a great experience with her," when, like you said earlier, it's more about what your needs are. Like
Mhm.
EMDR treatment,
Yeah.
do you need, DBT treatment?
Mhm.
These are very more stringent therapeutic approaches, as opposed to cognitive behavioral,
Right.
or play therapy, or,
Right.
these are very much, client-centered therapy is very much different than these type of modalities that are meant to treat people.
Right.
So absolutely it can be a different experience.
Right.
And as a client, you wouldn't be able to identify that. So that could be setting them up to have more harm than good.
Right.
Um, Negative encounters with therapists can be traumatic.
Yeah.
So I definitely would understand if someone were to say, "Oh, I had a bad experience and I'm not I'm not never going to see another therapist
Mhm.
again." Um, because you're trusting that person, you have to be vulnerable, and then however you feel, or how the situation unfolds, you can be hurt,
Right.
like I
Right.
said, it's not fun all the time. So I definitely um get that from the client's point
Right.
of view,
Right.
and I just want
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you're wondering, well, how do I know, like, even before I get started, if my therapist is going to be a good fit for me? How do I know that? One way that you can know that is to get on a call with the therapist you were interested in, to see if you might be a good fit. Believe it or not, just from like a 10 to 15-minute phone call, you can tell. Like,
yeah,
you can tell. I know for me, I can definitely tell when I get on a call with a client, even before we get started with therapy. I can tell if I'm a good fit for this client.
yeah,
Um, and I can tell, like, if this is a problem that I'm going to be able to help with. Because
right,
um, for me, therapy is not just about a client coming to me for me to just listen and validate. These are important um, aspects of therapy, of course. These are basic skills that we all learn: validation, listening, and, unconditional and positive regard, all these types of things. These are important. However, I feel like um, anyone can go talk to anyone who's really good at listening and validating, and they can get that. So for me, it's a lot more than just me listening to your problems. You hiring me to be your therapist means that I am going to help you on your healing journey, helping you break patterns, teaching you different coping tools, all these types of things. So with me, therapy is pretty much interactive, where I interact with my clients. I give them feedback during sessions, and sometimes, like, no joke, I am literally like at the edge of my seat because I'm getting excited, because I'm like, oh yeah, like, I'm hearing this, I'm hearing that, and I'm connecting this dot and that dot. So with clients that I have a really good fit with, like, that's kind of what the energy in my sessions feels like, because we're kind of on the same wavelength. Like, I know where you're coming from. Like, I get it, because some of the experiences that you've had, like, I can relate to. Now, I've also had the experience where I'm working with a client and I'm like, yeah, that's not it. It's not working out.
This
And
is not the one.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's not working out, and all I can do is just listen and validate, which again, these are not bad things, but for me, I would prefer to give the client much more than just listen and validate. So in situations like that where I feel like, session after session is just kind of me just listening and validating, and I'm like, I'm not really connecting, either because of personality differences, or maybe it's an issue that the client has that I can't really relate to. In situations like that, I refer and I have a conversation with the client where I'm like, you know what? I really feel like I'm not able to help, and I'm not really able to give you what you need. Let's look at other possibilities to see if there's another therapist out there who might be a good fit for you. So that is very important for me. And so with Thrive Unburdened, we actually offer a 30-minute free consultation to every potential client. Like, if you're interested, we get on a call, spend about 30 minutes to kind of see how we vibe, I guess. See
How
if
we
we're,
mesh. Yes.
yeah, see if we're on the same wavelength. Do I feel comfortable working with you in terms of your presenting problems? Do I feel comfortable working with you based on personalities? I'm more of a direct therapist, I guess. So I give feedback, and I'm very upfront and honest
Right.
with clients. And for some people, based on their personalities, that might come off as too aggressive.
Yes. Yes.
So,
And
um,
I do agree with that. Like, I think
yeah.
that, and like me, myself, my, you know, modality is very much strategic. I don't really do a lot of, uh, you know, directness, because I
Mhm,
really want the client to come to that realization kind of on their own. So I do a
mhm,
lot of, motivational interviewing. I do a lot, of validation
mhm,
and, unconditional regard.
mhm,
So I feel like in that situation, because I'm more strategic, and because I always have that underlying goal for the client to
mhm,
realize this, or to, uh, get to a place, in the stages of change
mhm,
that they're willing to, work on the alcohol problem, or
mhm,
so I think that initially, if I feel like there's not a good fit, if it's not a good fit, if I feel like there's not enough progress made, the first thing I check, right, is myself. Like, I
mhm.
check to make sure that there's nothing that I'm doing or I'm saying
Right.
that I'm placing on the client, that's not the client,
Mhm.
that's mine. That's my stuff.
Absolutely.
Then, at that point, if we're still kind of stagnant, then, I would kind of do, some maybe provocative statements, or like, you know, see about, well, I don't know, how far do you think we've gone in the last couple,
Mhm,
like, well, how do you feel treatment has been going?
mhm. Yeah.
Do you think that, we could do something that could help you probably see more progress, or
Mhm,
get to, another stepping stone? Like, what do you see your next goal as, at this point? And then, obviously, if we're still stagnant, then I'll have to say, well, perhaps it's something that we're both missing,
right.
but I don't want you to continue, going on, this journey and not making any steps forward.
Absolutely.
So, Um, I think that, therapists handle that situation differently a lot
Of
of
course. Yeah.
and because there's no textbook way to handle it because we're all therapists. We all have our own styles. We
Right.
all have our own, methods of treatment, you know, and so I think that it can come across and it can look very different from
Hmm.
very different
Absolutely. Yeah.
angles. But it is important to be able to have that caveat, and that's something when I meet for the first time, I always slide that in there. I'm like, I want you to know that and it's very casual, because I
Hmm.
want it to be very low stress. Um I want you to know that if you feel that, for whatever reason, this isn't working,
Hmm.
that you're uncomfortable or, that we might not be a good fit,
Hmm.
I want you to know that I will understand that, and that
Yeah.
has nothing to do with you. You need
Yeah.
to get the help that you need, and you need to be able to get it from the person that is going to help you the best.
Hmm.
So I encourage you, if you are not comfortable with working with me on these topics, to let me know so I can find you someone because I guarantee
Right.
I can help. Find you someone that can help you, and that's like
Right.
the first session. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I think that in that regards, that's because I've kind of, growing as, a therapist, in my license, I've kind of
Hmm.
got to that point where I'm like, how would I address this? Because of the fact of, just my personal experiences,
Hmm.
and I don't, mean to just, blatantly put that out there, but I'm going to be blunt here and vulnerable and hope everybody understands. But a lot of it came with um, working with white clients that weren't comfortable working with Black clinicians. And so at first, a lot of times they weren't in a place to say that. And
Hmm.
um, I was like, well, how am I going to get that point across? Because
Right.
I definitely don't want to be working with someone that doesn't want to work with me. And then ethically, I have convictions, I have morals, I have, thoughts about, equity and equality
Right.
that might come into the session when it doesn't need to be, you know?
Hmm.
So, I thought about how I would do that. And so from, that point on, I just started addressing it like early, very early, first
Yeah.
session.
Yeah.
I didn't get
I
into it, but yeah, I was
Oh,
thinking about
no, that's fine. I absolutely agree with that. Getting that client feedback is definitely very important. I probably ask this in like every session that I have with a client. So, how was the session for you today? Do you feel like you got what you needed out of the session and everything like that? Because I feel like that's important. Because again, therapy is about you, the client, not about the therapist. So if you feel like, um, your therapist said something that you don't agree with, or they provided some feedback or some recommendation, whatever the case may be, if you don't feel right with whatever they recommended, with what they said, it's perfectly okay to let your therapist know that, hey, I wasn't really feeling this. So I definitely do try my best at like every session just to check in with clients, to ask them like, how was it for you today? Was there something that that you needed to talk about that we didn't get to? So that way, therapy continues to focus on
the client.
you, the client, on the client.
I love
Um,
that. I really do.
so with that said, let's move on to the next point that I had was how to make the most out of your therapy sessions. So we've been talking about, how to choose a therapist, benefits of therapy, and, having a good fit with your therapist. So now you found this great therapist that you have a really good fit with. They can help you with your problem, and you've gone through the free consultation. You've signed up as a client with them, you've completed your intake session, and now you're actually about to begin your very first therapy session. How do you get the most out of your therapy sessions, and how do you continue to get the most out of your session? So I'm going to let you go first,
Okay.
and I'll
I
finish
think
after.
the most important thing is to go in and be honest with yourself and be able to get into a place where, because it's not going to be easy at first, it's
Mhm,
definitely not going to be, you can't, usually you can't just go in and just, put all of your stuff out there on
yeah.
the table. So I just think that if the client is honest with themselves and the need to, because a lot of times I get clients that want to fix the behaviors or the attitudes of other people.
Mhm,
And, I think if you start with yourself and focus on what you could be doing to be better in your therapeutic process,
mhm,
then you will get the most out of therapy because you'll become emotionally healthier. You'll
mhm,
become, you'll have more clarity about thoughts and
mhm,
decisions. And relationships with other people, you'll be able to understand better, and you'll be able to make better choices about,
mhm,
those relationships or whatever you're struggling with.
mhm,
So if you go in and you're thinking that it's not, and I like to call it, I refer back to the stages of change, and I'd like to call it pre-contemplative, which
mhm.
is the first stage of change. So if you go in and you're pre-contemplative, that means that you don't think that there's a problem.
Right.
So that is a huge barrier to the, you know, um, rollout of treatment in progress.
Mhm,
That pre-contemplative stage can take months. It's very difficult for the therapist to get through. So I encourage people to go in and, because it's non-judgmental. Like I said, it's a safe space. And if you found that perfect therapist, not a perfect therapist, but if you found the person that you
who's a
really
great
want
fit
to
for
get,
you.
yeah, it's a
Mhm,
right fit for you and you really want to get some stuff done, um then be open to getting stuff done. It's
mhm,
not uncommon to be in therapy and be like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking, or how could I behave that way, or where did that come from, or
mhm,
why do I do these things, or why do I say these things, or you know and I think if you're open to yourself to process that, and with that therapist that you trust and have that relationship with, it would do you a world of
mhm,
good. Oh, and it would do families a world
mhm,
of good, taking that accountability. It would do the Black community a world of good, taking accountability and working on ourselves to help others and,
mhm,
to help the future generations that are coming after us.
mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. What I want to add to that is that therapy works only if you're willing to put in the work.
Yes.
I say this all the time, all the time. Therapy works if you're willing to put in the work. So what I encourage clients to do to get the most out of therapy sessions is to, one, like you said, be honest with yourself. Like, where are you with that change process? Are you ready to change? Are you willing to change? Because oftentimes you might go to therapy, you get to that first session, you do the intake session, and during that intake session, so much stuff comes up that you're like, you know what? Actually, I thought I was ready. I'm not ready yet. Let
Not
me,
ready to touch
yeah,
that. Yeah,
I'm not ready yet. So
you don't
let
leave
me
that alone. Hmm.
table that and come back to therapy when I'm actually ready. That is absolutely fine to do that. That'll save you a whole lot of money in the long run, because if you're starting therapy but you're not really ready to do the work and you continue to show up session after session and you're not doing the work, Honestly, I'm gonna tell you, you're gonna be wasting money because you're not doing the work. You're not processing stuff. You're not ready to change. You're just going to go through the same patterns of behavior, patterns of relating to other people, and nothing's really changing.
You're
So you're
putting
not.
yourself in the position to be really harmed. You're putting yourself in
Yeah.
the position to, because therapy is psychology, and
Hmm.
you're going into a position for someone to basically just get in your head
Hmm.
and help you work out that stuff that's up there. And so if you're not ready, then you're basically setting yourself up to really really, traumatize yourself potentially, and then have a completely negative outlook on therapy again.
Yeah,
Um, I like
and
Jennifer's. Do you see Jennifer's question?
yes, and I am going to touch on that in a little bit with the family therapy question. So I wanted to say with not being ready to work in therapy, I really feel like when you're not ready, that can create resentment towards the therapeutic process. You become resistant because you're not ready. And I will answer the second question that Jennifer asked. How do you know when you're ready or not? That is a really, really great question.
It
So,
is.
therapy, I think, takes a lot of strength for you to even reach out to a therapist to try to start that process. What I always tell clients is that with that first consultation or during the intake, if there are stuff that are coming up during that first session and you're finding yourself kind of literally like shutting down, closing off, and you're like, yeah, I don't really want to talk about any of this stuff, most likely you're not ready. So if you're getting a lot of like strong reactions, really strong feelings, or even when say a therapist just kind of gives you feedback, they let you know, this is what I'm hearing. I'm hearing you say this, and I'm also hearing you say that you've been doing this, and your actions, like what you're telling me and what you're actually doing, they're not compatible. If a therapist is providing you feedback in a very validating manner, a very caring manner, empathetic manner, and you're not able to accept that feedback, and you find yourself kind of closing off again and
Or
becoming
defensive.
resistant,
That's a big some of
you're defensive, you're not ready.
Yep.
So it's always important to make sure that you are ready. So other ways that,
I want to add it on that real quick.
mhm, yeah, go
I
ahead.
know that when you start therapy, there's like a lot of different emotions. You're very
Mhm,
nervous, you're very, unsure of how it's going to go. Uh, I like to say that it's a journey,
yeah.
and if you go on journeys and you get to a barrier that you can't overcome, it doesn't necessarily mean that you stop your journey. You just know that this is something that you have to look into. And if
Yeah.
emotionally you're not capable of doing that, then you you can voice that to your
Mhm,
therapist as well. You can be like,
mhm,
I really was not comfortable with our conversation, last week, and I just haven't been able to, and you can process that, and then
mhm,
you can work on tools to help you become ready, to
yeah.
help you, get to that place where you want to talk about it, no matter how long it takes or,
Yeah.
what you have to do. You don't necessarily have to stop treatment to stop talking about triggers,
Mhm,
which are things that cause us to become upset and shut down and become defensive. So the whole process is ever evolving. And if you get to a point where you're like, I'm not comfortable at this point, right? Psychology will tell you that you need to go there so you can get it worked out and so it won't be an issue. But you don't want to traumatize yourself. So you can take the
right.
time and recognize that you're not there, which is something your therapist can help you do, and then work on getting to that point where you're okay with
Right,
talking about it, with processing it, with working through it.
right.
So,
Absolutely. And I also want to add really quick that a good therapist will never push you to go into an area where you're not ready to address yet. Because again, like Artessa said, that can cause a lot of harm. Um, and so what typically happens, what I'm going to say typically happens, at least for me, is that I will help the client with becoming aware of the emotions and the triggers. And we work on coping skills. We work on coping tools to help you manage these emotions, because what's going to happen is once we start going deeper into the issues that you weren't ready for yet, these emotions are going to come up, and you're going to need to know how to manage them when we start talking about um, the deeper things. So I also want to add that to make the most out of your therapy sessions, um, come prepared each session. Like, you may not necessarily know every single thing that you want to talk to your therapist about, but having some kind of bullet point thing or one or two topics that you bring, and you're kind of like, okay, these things have been on my mind. This happened this week, or I had this interaction with a family member or with a friend or whatever, and I really did not like how I felt from that interaction.
right.
That is something that you can bring to talk to your therapist about. I think that sometimes clients don't know that they can bring things to therapy to talk about, because of course the therapist is seen as the expert. So we may be the expert in the therapeutic process. We may be the expert in terms of we've gotten years of training and however many hours of continuing education, of training and certifications and whatnot on how to help you with a particular problem, but we're not experts in your lives.
Mhm.
You are the expert in your life. So you having some kind of an agenda for you to bring to your therapy sessions will make your sessions like even that much more valuable, because you're going to get a lot out of it. And so to Jennifer's question about what about family therapy with multiple people, I'm not really sure what the specific question is, Jennifer. So if you can clarify for me,
We were
that would
talking
be great.
about working on yourself and focusing on yourself in regards to what you need to do in therapy to improve. And then she says, what about therapy with multiple people? And in that situation, if you're coming together, then you still come together as a family, but you still take accountability for yourself and what you've done to potentially harm your family, or what you can do to potentially help your family get through whatever it is that they need to get through.
Mm-hmm,
I know with family dynamics, it can be difficult because you can have one person that's just not ready to, be vulnerable or apologize, or like whatever the situation may be. Um, and then you have another person that is, really angry, or
mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of different dynamics that come with family issues. Trust me, we all know.
Yeah.
Um, but it still takes that person that makes up that system. You know what I mean? A
Mm-hmm.
whole is greater than the sums of its parts, but you still need to bring your work, your therapeutic work to the table so that you can assist in helping your family members understand what's
Mm-hmm.
going on, and that you're in it, and that, you know what I mean? Like, I know that I've been having a lot of, interactions with, my family, and, I'm really, letting them know that, I'm really doing a lot of validating.
Mm-hmm.
I know they probably think I'm weird. They're like, "Why are you telling me you love me at noon on Tuesday?" I just do, brother. I just
Mm-hmm.
do. Because I feel like I've been thinking about that a lot lately, and relationships take every person taking accountability for what needs to happen to help that family become healthier again.
Mhm, mhm.
So
So hopefully that answered your question,
I
Jennifer.
hope
If
so,
it did
Jennifer.
not, let us know. And then she also asked if we could talk about some ways that they can know they've pushed it too far and have possibly traumatized themselves. So what I can say to that, um, okay, so it looks like you clarified for her, Cortessa.
Oh,
So great.
good.
Um, so as far as knowing if you've pushed it too far, and if you've traumatized yourself, I will say that if you've been putting something off like for a really, really long time, so let's say there's been some childhood trauma that you haven't really processed yet, and you've been putting it off, for a very long time. So when you're not ready to do that work, what I've seen happen a lot of the times is that clients will start talking about maybe one memory of the event. And then that will kind of snowball into flooding of emotions, and then engaging in like risky and impulsive behaviors, and not being able to um, actually continue behaving in a way that's normal for them. So if going into that memory, or trying to process whatever emotion is bringing on like strong reactions out of you, like really, really strong reactions, then yeah, you've gone too far. You weren't ready, and you didn't have the skills to help you manage these big emotions. So that's what I've seen, and I think that that's kind of pretty common across the board.
I
Um,
see a lot of I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
no,
I
no, no,
see
go ahead.
a lot of different when people address trigger points.
Mhm,
A lot of that is stemmed from like trauma. So
yeah,
if you get into a situation and it's traumatizing for you, you will walk away with manifestations that
mhm,
are triggers. So for instance, if you are in a car wreck, like, and then that's a traumatizing event. So maybe for a while you don't really like to drive, or if you drive your hands get sweaty, or if someone honks their horn, you're like
you're jumpy and on
shaky, or
that.
yeah.
Mhm,
So physiologically your body can give you cues that you have addressed a situation that is traumatizing. Also, people have all different types of symptoms, loss of appetite,
mhm,
overeating,
yeah,
like Winnie was talking about, impulsiveness, a lot of substance abuse and
mhm,
alcoholism stem from childhood trauma that has not been addressed. And
mhm,
so, or any type of trauma that has
yeah,
not been addressed, it manifests into like substance abuse or, alcohol abuse. And
mhm,
so these are things that you can look at. You can look at what your brain, because your brain is telling you, hey, this is not okay.
mhm,
And instead of being like, this is not okay because this happened and this happened, your brain will give you other manifestations. Like your brain will
yeah,
be like, we don't like to get in cars anymore. So this isn't good for us. Or,
mhm,
let's have, 5 drinks tonight and forget about, all of our sadness or whatever,
mhm,
So
mhm,
it's gonna show up in different ways, but not until you actually reach that point. So
mhm,
if you have a reaction right away, right? Which it could be delayed, or it could be,
yeah,
because you could, be in shock, or but if later on you're like, oh, I can't sleep because I'm thinking about what happened, or if you have nightmares or something, then it's a traumatizing event because you have manifested, a symptom or
right. And
manifested a result.
yeah, and it's very important to bring these things up with your therapist in therapy, because then that'll help the therapist know that you're not quite ready to go there yet. So let's kind of pause and focus back on helping you manage these emotions when they
Yeah.
come up, because you're going to need tools to deal with these reactions that you're going to be having from processing your trauma. So that said, the last thing that I wanted to touch on in regards to making the most out of your therapy sessions is to be sure that you are continuing the work outside of the therapy session. So
Yes.
that is something that I preach and preach and preach
Yeah.
to my clients, actually, because realistically, meeting with me 1 hour every week, or 30 minutes every week, or 45 minutes, however long, every week, or in some instances, meeting with a therapist every other week, or just one time a month, that's not, that's helpful, but that's not going to get you to where you need to be. So you need to be working on these things outside of the therapy session. So oftentimes, I give my clients homework and out what we're processing. I'll ask them to do things outside of the session. If a therapist gives you homework and they ask you to do things outside of the session, make sure
For
that you're
the
doing
love
that.
of God, do
Yeah,
it. We're
make
not
sure,
just asking.
yeah, make
Please
sure
do
that
it.
you are doing it. Please do it. And if you're working on like coping tools and different ways to manage your emotions, like if you're working on learning how to identify different patterns and everything like that, do the work outside of the session. Like you're gonna get the most out of therapy
Yeah.
when you do the work. Like I cannot say it enough.
Absolutely.
Do the
I
work.
know
Do the work.
that I know that for us, it's, even as therapists, it's still because you're still human.
Mhm.
So there's still, coping skills and emotional regulation that I have to practice, that
Yeah.
I have to remind myself to do. So as licensed clinicians, and I'm sure you're the same way, Winnie,
Yeah.
my triggers are, two twins, so I have to practice emotional regulation,
Mhm.
love them
Mhm.
to death, but
Yeah,
I need to be healthy for them.
we're
So if
human.
I'm only practicing it once an hour, what am I doing to be healthier for them for the rest of
Mhm.
the 96 hours in a week, or
Mhm.
96
Yeah.
however many hours there are in the
However
week.
many hours.
Yeah, so you have to practice, and it's okay if, you make a mistake, it's like I said, it's a safe place, it's a safe zone. Come back to your therapist and talk about it. You guys can
Mhm.
process it more and discuss maybe a better coping tool,
Yeah.
something more effective.
Yeah,
For
not every coping skill is going to be your coping skill. Not every coping tool will work for you. So if your therapist asks you to do something and you're like, yeah, that's not me, that doesn't work for me, then it doesn't work for you. There's a ton of other coping skills and tools that your therapist can teach you. And just to touch on the idea of a safe space really quick, I just want to say that if throughout the therapeutic relationship you feel like, so this therapy process, this therapeutic relationship is supposed to be safe. It's supposed to be a safe space, and I'm not feeling safe. Please, 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 please let your therapist know. Let your therapist know. I know that Cartessa mentioned before that maybe there's something in the therapist's office that's triggering you. Maybe there's something on my wall when you sign in to the video session that's triggering for you. Or maybe, like it's a shirt that I wore. I don't know. Like there are a lot of things that can trigger reactions out of people. And as the therapist sitting on the other side of that, we don't know
Yes,
unless
we're unaware. We're
you tell
unaware.
us. So we try to make it a safe space for you, but ultimately, um, the space is going to be safe if you let us know. And that space that we're trying to create, I know that for me, I try to create a space where clients can be authentic, they can be themselves. I tell clients, like, when you start therapy with me, when you come into the sessions, like, come as you are, take off the mask, like, leave
Yes,
the mask outside. Like, I
definitely.
want us to be able to be real, because that's
Yeah,
what therapy is about. Like, if you can't be yourself, if you find that you're at a point in your therapeutic relationship with your therapist where it's not safe, it doesn't feel safe for you to be yourself, there's something missing. Speak up, let your therapist know. Let your
absolutely.
therapist know.
Absolutely agree. 100%.
So, last 2 points before we end. So, thank you so much, everybody who's been sticking around with us, commenting, asking questions. We really appreciate that.
We
Um,
do. You guys give
so,
us life.
yeah, they really do give us life. Um, I wanted to talk about paying for therapy. So that's a question that I get a lot. How do I pay for therapy? How do I find out how much it costs to go to therapy? Yeah, how do you pay for therapy? So what I will say is that there are a lot of different ways that you can pay for therapy. Of course, if you're able to afford it out of pocket, you can pay for it out of pocket. Um, if you have health insurance, most health insurance policies have mental health benefits that you can use towards therapy. So what you would do is you would get in touch with the therapist that you're interested in working with, and you would ask them, "Hey, do you take my health plan?" And from there, they'll kind of walk you through that process. If you're not able to pay for therapy out of pocket and your health insurance doesn't cover it, you can ask the therapist that you're interested in working with if they have a discount of some sort
A
or a
sliding
sliding
scale.
scale.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of therapists have a sliding scale. I
Mhm.
have not met a therapist yet that does not have a sliding fee scale.
Mhm.
So that is something that therapists are doing to be more accessible to
Mhm.
low income populations, especially the clinicians I know that want to focus on low income
Mhm.
populations. They have a sliding scale. They're willing to do what they can and
Yeah.
work with the client. A couple of weeks ago, maybe it's a month now, I had a client that just couldn't afford therapy, even with the insurance. It was just too much.
Mhm.
And so I linked her because of her, her emotional needs. I linked her with another therapist that was equine licensed and just
Cool.
amazing. And she was able to help her with a sliding scale. She did that as
Mhm.
a favor to me. So,
Mhm.
I know therapists have sliding scales. Financial stress should not stop you from seeking
Mhm.
that therapist with that good fit that can help you, because we're more concerned with helping the population, obviously, than we are with getting rich. If that were the case, then like
We also want to get paid well. I will say that we're
yeah,
not we're not trying to, sacrifice ourselves to save everybody.
we're not trying to work for free.
Living.
Yes.
Yeah,
But,
but
a
the point
therapist
is,
can make
yeah,
a comfortable
therapists are
living and
willing.
still yeah, make a comfortable living and still help, low income, um,
Mhm.
people and, set the boundary for that, like, I
Mhm.
think I wanna get to a point where, you know, um, I can do some pro bono like that. I mean,
Mhm.
that's like a dream of mine to have, like, a couple of just free
Yeah.
clients on my, on my caseload, so,
Mhm.
if time would ever permit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And another possibility is to maybe look into your community mental health organizations to see what you can access, see if there's a community agency who might be willing to pay for you to go to therapy. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can be creative with paying for therapy. The other thing that I recommend a lot is to include mental health as part of your budget. So when you're making, your monthly budget or whatever, include that, because I think oftentimes mental health and health in general can fall like at the bottom of our list, because if it's not a crisis, if it's not bothering us right now, then it's like, okay, it's gonna take the back burner. And I understand, that people's rents need to be paid, and you gotta eat, your car payment, your bills gotta be taken care of. At the same time, please understand that your mental health also needs to be a priority, because the fact of the matter is, if you're not mentally healthy, you're not going to be able to enjoy your life. You're not going to be able, in a lot of situations, even work for you to be able to pay your bills and stuff. So that really comes from, I think, kind of changing our mindset around how we understand mental health, how we understand therapy, because I can tell you, like, for myself personally, I am at a healthy place in my life right now, and I can do the things that I'm doing, and I can thrive because I've made my mental health a priority. So, including that as a, like, budget it in, like, seriously, budget. If you want to put aside like $200 a month, and you say, this is for therapy, even if you can only afford like one session a month, that's better than nothing. So that's kind of what I have for that. And in closing, I wanted to just have a quick conversation about the difference between therapy and coaching, because I don't necessarily know that a lot of people are aware that coaching is not therapy. And so when I hear people say, well, I went to a coach who specialized in trauma, or a coach who specialized in this and that, I'm always kind of like, okay, well, tell me more. Like, what exactly did they do? And, what did you all talk about? Because therapy and coaching are two very different fields. And I will say that with coaching, it's not a regulated field. So that means coaches, like life coaches, whatever, business coach, career coach, all these
No
types
ethical
of
code. They don't
coaches,
have any.
it's not a regulated field.
They have
So,
no ethical code.
so literally anyone, like when I tell you anyone can decide that, I'm going to be a life coach today, or I'm going to be a relationship coach. Like anyone can be a coach. There's not
I did
like
not know
any kind of,
that.
yeah, there's like no training requirements, no
Oh
license
my God.
requirements, no certification requirements. There's not any of that. So it's been kind of a passion of mine lately to make sure that people understand, when you're looking for a coach. Now, hear me, coaching is great. I'm a life coach as well. And I can say this because I've completed training to help me understand the differences between coaching and therapy. And there are two coach certification bodies that I'm aware of that have ethical codes and everything like that people can ascribe to. However, it's not required.
That is
I
insane.
I did it because I wanted to practice ethically, and to make sure that when I'm coaching a client, I'm not doing therapy with you, because that's illegal
Yes.
for someone who doesn't have a therapy license to be coaching you. So with coaching focuses more on like future oriented stuff, like future oriented goals. And you can coach someone on like how to gain clarity and finding, like their purpose and stuff like that, and coaching someone on starting a business. I mean, there's different types of coaching, but coaching in itself doesn't go into like emotions and trauma and all the underlying issues. So I just want to say this and let people know that if you're needing to work on emotional stuff and you're needing to work on underlying issues, you're needing to work on breaking dysfunctional patterns and generational trauma, all that kind of stuff. If you're having a mental health difficulty that meets criteria for a mental health diagnosis, you need to go see a therapist,
Yeah.
not a coach.
Boundaries, you need those structures, you need that
Mhm.
line. You need that in order to be safe with
Yeah.
the things that you were discussing, like emotional trauma and DSM criteria.
Mhm.
You need the ethics that licensed clinicians provide,
Yeah.
licensed therapists provide.
Yeah.
That just blew my mind. I did not know.
Yeah.
So you could be
Yeah.
a life
Yeah.
coach and they could be like, oh,
Yeah.
well, go and
Anyone can be a life coach. So when I get coaching clients, when they sign up for coaching with me, I make sure that they understand the differences between coaching and therapy. If they need therapy, like based on what we talk about during that consultation and stuff, then I let them know that, hey, like this is not coaching territory. You actually need therapy. So I just wanted to touch on that in closing. And so
thank you.
ways that you can check and make sure that your therapist is actually licensed is you can go on your state board website. You can look up their names and pull up their licensing information. I mean, it's public information. You
Absolutely.
guys do your due diligence to make sure that whoever you're signing
Absolutely.
up to get services with is actually licensed. And I would say if you're gonna go see a coach for whatever the issue is that you need coaching on,
Goal
ask them
setting.
about their coach training. Ask them if they understand the differences between therapy and coaching. Ask them if they have any type of coaching credential. And if they do, ask them to provide you with that information so you can look it up. So that's kind of all that I had on that. I know we've talked for a pretty long time today, but I feel like
Yes.
this was a good conversation that needed to be had. So I appreciate everyone who came on and stayed with
Yes.
us. Thank you for
Thank
all of
you.
the questions, for the comments. We really appreciate it. So next Saturday, we're going to be back again to talk about a specific mental health topic. So I hope to see everybody back on. And thanks, Cartessa,
Me too.
for,
Thank you,
for being
Amy.
back on here with me. So
Yes. I
have a
enjoyed
great weekend.
myself. This was great.
Yeah, this was really great. So have a great weekend, everybody. Have a great weekend, Cartessa, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.